Hey everybody, it's me, Zara, and it's time for another Zoodles and Noodles read aloud. Today we'll be reading A Bad Case of Stripes. And here with me today is Rosie. Say hi, Rosie. She doesn't talk much, but she would love to just sit and listen to our story. So I said, you should come today. Now let's start the book. You ready, Rosie? She's ready. Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people would think of her. Today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the very first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on her pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. Well, Camilla looks fine in this picture, and there's all the 42 outfits she tried on. But let's see what Camilla looks like in the mirror. Her mother ran into the room, and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens!" she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes!" This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Miss Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered. "But just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," your mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Camilla was relieved. Whew! She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid what the other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear with these crazy stripes. She already hadn't chosen an outfit before, but now it's going to be impossible. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. She looks like a flag. That girl's like, what? What do you think of that, Rosie? Oh. Let's keep reading, everyone. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else yelled, "Checkerboard." And a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change channels on a TV. There she is. Oh, poor Camilla. Everybody's yelling and laughing at her. What do you think of that, Rosie? Oh, Rosie, those kids are just excited. But they are being a little mean. Let's see what happens next. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious." Contagious means they might spread to other people too. Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans. but she had been laughed at enough for one day. There are her parents. Well, yes, I see, Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. I think I better bring in the specialist. We'll be right over. About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. The specialist went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not the mumps, concluded Dr. Grop. Or the measles, said Dr. Sponge. It's definitely not chicken pox, said Dr. Cricket. Or sunburn, said Dr. Young. Try these, said the specialist. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. Take one of each before bed, said Dr. Grop. Then they filed out the door, followed by Dr. Bumble. Let's see if the pills work. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and staring back at her was a multicolored pill with her face on it. Look, she's a giant pill. Wow, Rosie, isn't that funny? It's okay, Rosie, you can laugh. It is a little funny to see a pill girl. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called. But this time, instead of the specialist, he brought the experts. Dr. Gourd and Dr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at, and listened to. It might be a virus. It might be a virus, Mr. Gourd announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. Or possibly some form of bacteria. So, out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. Or it could be a fungus, added Dr. Gourd. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla, then at each other. We need to go over these numbers again back at the lab, Dr. Gourd explained. We'll call you when we know something. But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. There's the virus balls, the bacteria tails, and the fungus blotches. Yick! By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside of her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. Look, there's all these reporters, and they're all yelling and screaming and trying to take pictures. There's some news guy getting his hair ready, and everybody's knocking on the Cream's door. Oh no. Everybody's there. Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. which, in case you didn't know, is a doctor for animals. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance, until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail. But nothing worked. Oh no, what's going to happen to Camilla? Yeah, I don't know either, Rosie. Guess we'll have to find out. And there's the same news lady we saw from outside. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes. Okay? Breathe deeply and become one with your room. I wish you hadn't said that, Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth. And her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed, "Ah!" and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It's just getting worse and worse. She began to sob. Oh no, what's going to happen to Camilla? She's her room now. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood a woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help. There's the old woman, as plump and sweet as a strawberry. She went into Camilla's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a bad case of stripes, one of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said, these might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. My, no, replied the old kind woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I bet you like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big, heaping plate full of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh dear, said the old woman sadly. She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good. And being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait! She cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, said the old woman with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth, which is still the bed. Said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. The whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camilla's head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. There's Camilla. She's finally back to herself. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted and never had a touch of stripes again, except for maybe on her bow. And there she is eating lima beans, and she doesn't care what those other kids think. And that's why it's important to be yourself, no matter what anybody else thinks, or else you might get a bad case of stripes too. Okay, that's the end of our story. Bye. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be notified when we come out with another video. Bye. Say bye, Rosie.